There is an unseen fire that decides the fate of all who dare to dream. Makes no noise, needs no witnesses, and hidden. It is the most powerful force. It is behind every great creation, every improbable turnaround, every life that refuses to remain ordinary. Some call it ambition, others faith. Carl Jung called it burning desire, a primal spark that is born in the depths of the unconscious and propels the human being to transform the invisible into reality. This fire is not made of words, but of urgency. It asks no permission. It simply burns, even those who try to deny it. From the first breath of consciousness, there is a silent flame within each person seeking expression. It is the connecting point between who you are and who you can become. This burning desire is not a whim of the ego. It is an ancestral, almost wild call to evolve, to create, to mark. And that is why it is frightening. Because everything that awakens true potential also demands sacrifice. Fire illuminates, but it also destroys. It reveals what is essential and consumes what is false. When lit, it forces you to choose between the comfort of shadow and the pain of light. And this choice defines destinies. Everyone says they want to win, but you are willing to burn. It's easy to admire the brilliance of those who conquer. Difficult to endure the heat that forges that bridge. There's a dangerous zone between wanting and doing. A space where most get lost, a territory where intentions die before becoming action. On that threshold, desire transforms into frustration, and fire turns to. But for those who decide to cross that border, something magical happens. Ceases to be thought and force. The invisible begins to move the visible. Jung believed that burning desire is the hidden engine of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. While most people live reacting to the external world, the individual, guided by inner fire, begins to create their own reality. They don't wait for opportunities, they create them. They don't seek shortcuts, they build paths. This journey has a high price, the solitude of those who tread the unknown. Because lighting the fire means abandoning the herd. When you awaken the flame, you begin to see the world with different eyes. You can withstand that light. This fire is instinctive, but also sacred. It is the language of the soul trying to manifest itself. There is no formula to ignite it, but there are clear signs of when it begins to burn. A deep unease, a feeling that something greater is calling you. It's when the everyday seems too small for the size of your spirit. When work, habits, and conversations lose their flavor, and everything within you begins to cry out for meaning. At this point, many are confused. They think they are in crisis when, in fact, they are awakening. Because awakening is never calm. It comes like a silent fire that destroys certainties and is reborn as purpose. But what happens when someone decides to fuel that fire at the very end? When the fear of failure is less than the fear of not trying. At that moment, life's vibration, coincidences cease to be random, and the universe begins to react to the movement. Jung called this synchronicity, the phenomenon in external events seem to align with a person's internal state. It's as if reality responds to the intensity of your desire. You begin to attract people, ideas, and circumstances that previously seemed impossible. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed. Inner fire is selective. It only responds to truth. If your desire is born of vanity, it quickly fades. But if it is born of the soul, it grows even in adversity. And that is why few keep the flame. The pain of self-knowledge is the fuel of transformation. Most flee from it. They want results, cannot endure the process. They want glory, but avoid solitude. They want gold, but fear the fire that purifies it. Jung said that all real progress comes from confronting one's own shadow, part of us that carries everything we have seen. The fire of burning desire is what illuminates this darkness, showing that the power we seek outside has always been within. Behind every genius, there's a controlled fire. Behind every silent victory, there are sleepless nights and burning thoughts. Fire is the same. What changes is how the individual deals with it. Some burn themselves trying to prove something to the world. Others learn to dance in the flames and transform the heat into light. That's the difference between ambition and purpose. Ambition wants to have. Purpose wants to be. The first seeks recognition, the second seeks meaning. And when the fire aligns with meaning, it becomes indestructible. Nothing is more dangerous to the system than a person ablaze inside. Because they refuse to be dominated, they don't accept the role of victim, and they aren't content with crumbs. The world fears those driven by burning desire because it cannot control it. This person becomes unpredictable, creative, inspiring. They don't follow the pattern, they break it. And that bothers people, it always will. But it's also what moves humanity forward. Those who dare to ignite the fire within themselves, even knowing they will be misinterpreted by those who chose the cold. The most curious thing is that the more intense the flame, the more silence it demands. True fire doesn't show off, it transforms. It doesn't shout, it shines. And it is precisely this inner glow, discreet and firm, It begins to alter everything around. People feel it, even if they don't understand. They feel that there is something different, something that vibrates beyond the surface. It is the energy of someone who lives connected to their own purpose. But what prevents most people from igniting that flame? Fear. The fear of failure, of being judged, change. Fear of discovering that what they desire requires giving up what is comfortable. This is the point at which many give up. But fear, according to Jung, is merely the shadow of desire. It arises to test the authenticity of your fire. It is superficial, it goes out. If it is true, it grows even stronger. That is why every great transformation begins with a moment. It is the unconscious warning. Now it's real. Those who accept this calling begin to understand that fire is not the enemy, it is the teacher. It does not come to destroy, but to reveal what needs to be left behind. The fear of getting burned is what keeps millions living in lukewarm silence, slowly extinguishing their own souls. But there are those who choose the opposite, who decide to plunge into the flames and emerge reborn, who understand that the fire that burns also purifies, and that all conscious destruction is only the beginning of a new creation. The invisible fire that decides destinies waits within each person, observes patiently until someone has the courage to feed it. That happens, there's no turning back. Life becomes movement, intensity, meaning. Nothing is by chance, even chaos gains. The question is, are you willing to endure the heat necessary to train? Because fire doesn't negotiate, it demands total surrender. In the end, there are only two types of people: those who fear the flames and those who learn to dance within them. The former live extinguished, dreaming of what they could. The latter transform that dream. It is in them that the world finds inspiration, even without understanding why. What happens when that fire ceases to be just a desire and transforms into a calling? This is the boundary that separates those who desire from those, and it is precisely there that the true journey begins. Jung said that desire is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, a creative impulse trying to manifest itself through matter. It is a force that cannot be tamed, only understood. When it arises, it seems like a common thought, a fleeting idea. But if it is true, it grows, matures, and begins to occupy every space in the mind. It appears in the middle of the routine, in traffic, in the shower, in the insomnia of the early morning. It is that persistent feeling that there is something you need to do, something that is calling you and will not leave you in peace until it is heard. The burning desire is not gentle, it is insistent. And the more you try to ignore it, the more it finds ways to make itself present. How many times have you felt such a calling and tried to told yourself it wasn't the right time, that you lacked money, time, or courage? Even so, the idea kept returning in different ways, in unexpected places, sometimes in a random conversation, sometimes in a song, or in the gaze of someone who seems to reflect what you're trying to forget. Jung said that the unconscious speaks through symbols, and desire is its most direct language. It doesn't speak with words, it speaks with signs. And when these signs repeat themselves, it's not a coincidence, it's self trying to manifest itself through you. There are people who spend their entire lives ignoring. They live trapped in predictable routines, fulfilling commitments that don't fulfill them, repeating phrases like, "One day I will, ... that day never comes." They believe they are safe, when in reality, they are asleep. The price of comfort is forgetting one's purpose. The burning desire is the unsettling reminder that there is something within you that doesn't want status nor applause, wants meaning, life. Imagine an artist who, for fear of failure, keeps his paintings locked away in a closet. He tries to lead a normal life, but as the years go by, he begins to feel an inexplicable sadness. Nothing seems to satisfy him. He moves to a new city, changes jobs, changes relationships, the emptiness room, until the day he opens an old drawer and discovers the paints he had forgotten about. That smell awakens something ancient and powerful. Suddenly, he understands what hurt wasn't lack of expression. He had denied himself, and at that moment, touching the brush, the fire reignited. The desire never left him. It was just waiting for the moment when he would have the courage to listen to it again. This happens to all of us. Some feel it in their body, constant tiredness, and anxiety without cause. Others feel it in their mind, confusion, feeling of being on track. And there are those who perceive it in strange events, when life begins to push them in directions they try to avoid. The relationship ends, the job ends, something unexpected happens, and what seemed like loss reveals itself as liberation. Jung believed that the unconscious acts when consciousness resists. When you refuse to listen to the call of the soul, life itself creates circumstances to force the reunion. Burning desire is, therefore, a form of destiny. Not an imposed destiny, but a destiny chosen by the soul before consciousness is even aware of it. And that is why it is so unsettling, because it is older than the will itself. It is not a want, it is a need. And when you try to silence it, it returns stronger, more intense, until you realize that resisting costs more than surrendering. There comes a moment in life when the soul begins to scream silently. No external achievement seems to fill the void. You buy things, travel, distract yourself, but something is missing. It's as if a part of you observes everything from the outside, waiting for you to stop for a moment and listen. And when you finally listen, fear arises, because true desire almost always demands change. What asks you to leave your old job, to break off a stagnant relationship, to confront what you avoid most. It doesn't promise comfort, it promises meaning. Jung said that the first sign of the right desire is discomfort. It keeps you awake at night, invades your thoughts, insists on repeating itself. The difference between ordinary desire and ardent desire: depth. Ordinary desire seeks pleasure and approval. Ardent desire seeks evolution and expression. Ordinary desire is satisfied when it's seen. Ardent desire only satisfied when it is lived. It is the kind of desire that doesn't disappear with time. On the contrary, it grows. It's like a spiritual seed that germinates in the dark, waiting for the moment to break through the soil. Many try to escape this fire by distracting themselves with what is immediate, trading purpose for fleeting pleasures. But the fire of burning desire accepts no substitutes. It may hide for a while, but it will burn, disguised as symptoms: anxiety, impatience, dissatisfaction, boredom. The soul demands movement, and the more you try to lull it to sleep, the louder it screams. It's common to hear someone say, "I don't know what I want from life," but that statement is rarely true. Deep down, they just don't want to admit what true desire would require, because it demands leaving behind what is safe, what is known. It asks for faith. And faith, in this context, is not believing without proof, acting even without guarantee. It's taking the first step in the dark, trusting that the ground will appear. It's the leap that separates those who only dream from those who achieve. There is an old story about an apprentice who sought out his master and asked, "How will I know when I have found my purpose?" The master led him to a lake and, without saying anything, submerged his head underwater, holding it there for seconds. The apprentice began to struggle, desperate. When he was finally released, gasping for breath, the master asked, "What did you crave most while you were down there?" He replied, "Air." Then the master said, "When you desire your purpose with the same intensity with which you desired air, you will have found it." That burning desire is just that, the need to breathe in one's own truth. It doesn't arise as a rational choice, but as a vital urgency. It's the soul saying, "Without this, I suffocate." Therefore, discomfort is a good sign. It means something is awakening, that creative energy is trying to find a way to express itself. It's the beginning of a transformation. But there's a detail that few realize. Burning desire rarely manifests itself in a great way. Sometimes it starts small, almost imperceptible, hidden in the subtext of routine. It's the impulse to learn something new, to change the way you speak, to create a project, start from scratch. The unconscious is subtle, but persistent. It doesn't shout at you, it calls to you. It's up to you to listen. The danger lies in confusing this calling with leading impulses. The ego loves to disguise superficial desires as profound purpose. It wants to be admired, recognized, valued. It doesn't want to serve. True, burning desire doesn't seek applause. It seeks contribution. It doesn't ask, "What do I get out of this? What was I born to deliver?" When this understanding arrives, everything changes. Priorities are rearranged. What was once urgent loses importance. What once seemed impossible begins to make sense. Ultimately, burning desire is the meeting point between the human and the divine. It's the place where personal will aligns with the will of the universe. When you find it, you feel it, no doubt. Your body vibrates differently, your gaze changes, your energy is renewed. It's as if something inside you says, "Now, yes." And that's where the challenge begins. Because the burning desire doesn't accept being ignored. The more you try to run away, the closer it gets. The more you deny it, the more it infiltrates every detail of your life. It can manifest as coincidences, as opportunities that are nowhere, even as crises. The soul is persistent. You can resist for a while, but in the end, there's always a moment when the call becomes too strong to deny. And when that moment arrives, there's no going back to sleep. The flame ignites, but what if this fire, which seems so sacred, also hides aside? That's where desire is divided between light and shadow, and where the most dangerous part of the journey. This is the most dangerous and, at the same time, most divine face of burning desire. It does not accept being ignored. The more you try to distance yourself from it, the more it infiltrates the details of your life. Jung said that what you resist persists, and no phrase describes this phenomenon better. The unconscious is patient, but relentless. It doesn't forget what you came to do. It only waits for you to tire of running away. When you try to silence the call, it returns in the form of repetition, people, situations, and events that repeat themselves with different names, but with the same purpose, to remind you of what is being of. And the most curious thing is that the more you ignore it, the more intense the message becomes. It's as if the universe becomes complicit with your unconscious. Coincidences begin to align in an almost unsettling way. You think about changing your life, and on the same day, someone appears talking about you. Dream about something, and in the morning, you see the exact image on the street, on some billboard. It seems like chance, but it's the fire trying to communicate. Jung called this synchronicity, a symbolic dialogue between the mind and reality. What is repressed seeks expression, and life responds, even if you pretend not to see it. But there's a dangerous trap in this process. Not every desire comes from the soul. Some are born from the shadows disguised as purpose. These are desires that arise to fill a void, not to give meaning. The ego is a master at falsifying callings, transforms insecurity into ambition, lack into a need for prominence. And when the ego takes the place of the soul, the fire ceases to illuminate and begins to consume. How many people have you seen achieve everything they wanted and yet remain unhappy? Their fire burned in the wrong. Ever stop to think if what you want most, or if it's just an scene? Burning desire, when born from the unconscious, is like an uncontrolled flame. It doesn't build, it destroys. It becomes obsession, dependence, addiction. The person begins to live for it, believing they will only be complete when they achieve what they desire. Fire burning without purpose, devouring everything around. Jung warned, that which is not brought to consciousness returns as destiny. In other words, what you don't illuminate within yourself will end up dominating your life from the outside. That's why so many people find themselves trapped in cycles of self-sabotage, repeating patterns they swore to abandon. They think they choose, but it's the unconscious that pulls the strings. Repressed desire is like a caged wild animal. It doesn't disappear, it just waits for the moment to escape. And when it does, it comes with the accumulated force of years of denial. That's when crises arise. Emotional collapse, exhaustion, emptiness. Not bad luck, it's the soul demanding space. Every symptom is a plea for expression. Anxiety, insomnia, the feeling of suffocation. All these are ways for the unconscious to scream, there's something in you that needs, and ignoring this prolongs the pain. But the paradox is that the same fire that destroys can purify. When you face desire consciously, it transforms into direction. It's the same fire, but now under control. It ceases to be brute force, becomes creative. It is the fire that forges gold, separating the essential from the superfluous. Everything depends on how you use it. If the fire burns outside of you, it burns. Burns inside, it illuminates. What if what you call a problem is actually your soul's attempt to wake you up? Some people need to lose everything to understand what truly matters. Others only awaken after a collapse, illness, irreparable loss. It seems cruel, but it's consistency. The unconscious doesn't want punishment, it wants to awaken. It creates chaos when silence isn't enough. It's like a teacher who speaks softly, then loudly, and finally shouts. The shout is always the soul's last resort to be heard. This is where many confuse destiny with punishment. Why is this happening to me? The answer, though difficult, is simple: because you didn't listen when it was whispered. What arrives as a crisis is often the call that has been ignored for too long. And that's why Jung said that life doesn't miss its address. Everything that happens to you comes with a symbolic purpose. Nothing is gratuitous in the theater of the unknown. But there's a revelation that few realize. Burning desire doesn't want you to accomplish something. It wants you to ... take place. You're not interested in the outcome, in the transformation the journey brings. When you understand this, the way you relate to your ambitions changes completely. You stop chasing goals as if they were the prize and start seeing each step as the purpose itself. The journey becomes more valuable than the destination. How many times have you achieved something and then, soon after, felt the emptiness return? This happens because the burning desire doesn't end with the conquest. The living force that moves you from stage to stage, always demanding more authenticity. And if you try to cling to an old version of yourself, it starts pressuring you to change. That's why growth is always accompanied by pain. You're being invited to abandon identities that no longer serve you, and the ego doesn't like I. Fire, then, becomes the instrument of consciousness. Tests, corrects, finds. It forces you to look inward and distinguish what is the soul's desire from what is disguised. And this discernment is what separates the creator from the prisoner. The creator uses fire as a tool. The prisoner is consumed by it. Sometimes the real challenge isn't getting what you want, but discovering if what you want is truly yours. A burning desire, when genuine, doesn't cause prolonged suffering, it causes growth. Constant suffering is a sign that you're feeding a fire that doesn't belong to you. When the desire is true, even the effort is peaceful. It's tiring, but not empty. It hurts, but ends. What if what you fear losing most is precisely what you need to let burn? Ultimately, the fire is always trying to bring you back to self. It burns away the superfluous, pride, the masks, the illusions of control. That's why the process is painful. Each flame is a mirror. You look into the fire and see what needs to be destroyed so that the essential can appear. The burning desire doesn't want to make you someone different. It wants to make you whole. When you stop resisting and allow the fire to flow through you, something changes. Fear gives way to clarity. Emptiness transforms into presence. The energy that was once used to flee begins to be, and it is at that moment that the fire ceases to be an enemy and becomes a god. The same desire that once seemed to torment you now directs you. You realize that it didn't want to punish you, wanted to awaken. And suddenly, everything that once seemed chaotic begins to make sense. The repetitions, the coincidences, the crises, everything reveals itself as a perfect choreography designed for a single purpose, to bring you back to the center. The unconscious never wanted to destroy you, only to return you to the path. Burning desire is the map it uses to guide you. But are you ready to follow this map to the end, even if it leads you through fire again? Most people dream, but few structure their dream. They desire a better life, a change, a sign, but they continue repeating the same actions every day, hoping that destiny will change on its own. Jung said, "You will become what you think about most." And this phrase is almost an invisible law of the human mind. Thought is the seed of desire, and desire is the fuel of reality. But a seed only germinates if planted in the right soil, and the soil is action. Without action, every dream rots with promise that never. Many believe that burning desire is simply feeling intensely. But feeling without acting is like lighting a fire without adding wood. Fire goes out. Desire demands movement because the unconscious responds to action, not waiting. It doesn't understand speeches, it understands gestures. That's why people who take risks, even without knowing how, end up attracting improbable opportunities. They move the world because they move first. And the universe, somehow, seems to reward courage with coincidences that defy logic. There are true stories that clearly reveal this phenomenon. Thomas Edison, before creating the light bulb, tried more than 1,000 times, failed every time. When asked how he endured so much failure, he replied, "I haven't failed. I've just discovered 1,000 ways that don't work." Jung would probably have said that. Edison wasn't just but materializing the creative desire of his own soul, the unconscious will to bring light into the world. Edison wasn't seeking fame, he was seeking expression. And when the desire is genuine, persistence isn't suffering, purpose. This type of energy is present in all great human achievements. A Japanese researcher, Saru Emoto, conducted experiments with water crystals, showing how human emotions altered their microscopic forms. Water exposed to words of love formed harmonious and beautiful patterns. Water exposed to words of hate became chaotic. Jung would say that this is the symbolic power of the unconscious acting on matter. Ardent desire, when channeled with clarity and true emotion, literally reorganizes the mind. When aligned with the soul, becomes a magnetic field of synchronicity. But the problem begins when the ego tries to hijack the soul's desire. It distorts it, transforms it into competition, into comparison, into a need to prove something. The fire then loses its meaning and becomes poison. That's why so many seemingly successful people live in inner collapse, because their desire was not born from heart. They want to win, not to express who they are, but to hide what they feel. And fire, when used to escape, burns everything it touches. Jung stated that no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This means that, to keep the fire burning healthily, it is necessary to traverse the shadows that surround it, to question intentions, confront fears, to look at the side that the ego tries to hide. True desire does not fear confrontation, it seeks it, because it knows that fire only becomes light when it crosses the dark. A curious example of this journey can be seen in something seemingly simple: light of moths. Researchers have discovered that when a moth is attracted to artificial light, it ends up circling around it until it dies of exhaustion. The instinct that should guide it to the moon, its natural reference point, is confused by the nearby intensity of the lamp. Its desire is genuine, but it has been diverted by illusion. The same happens with human beings. When the ego takes the place of the soul, we follow false lights that make us spin in place, believing that we are moving forward. But there is a turning point, the moment when the fire is purified by a... It's when you start asking yourself, why do I want this? What am I trying to fill? These questions are the filter that separates the desire that liberates from the desire that imprisons. The first comes with peace, second with anguish. When you act out of alignment, time seems to cooperate. When you act out of fear, time wears you down. The difference is subtle, but it transforms destinies. And this transformation doesn't always come as a sudden enlightenment. Sometimes it manifests itself in the details of routine, in small invisible choices. It's the moment you decide to study instead of complaining, act instead of waiting, to be silent instead of justifying. Each micro-action is a conversation with unconscious, and it responds. It always responds. The problem is that most people talk and don't listen. The unconscious doesn't speak with words, it speaks with results. There is something almost magical about the moment. Desire and action will report improbable events, encounters that change paths, seemingly accidental discoveries that open new doors. Jung called this meaningful chance, and if we observe closely, every person who has achieved something extraordinary reports a common thread, a sequence of coincidences that seemed guided. What is called luck, Jung would call coherence between the conscious and the unconscious. But it's impossible to sustain that fire without structure. Burning desire needs discipline, and discipline isn't rigidity. It's fidelity to a purpose. It's the act of remaining present even when there are no visible results. It's waking up every day and choosing to continue, even without guarantee. Discipline is the temple where the fire stays alive. Without it, desire dissipates and dies of hunger. Most people give up when the enthusiasm fades, failing to realize that enthusiasm is merely the initial spark. True passion doesn't depend on euphoria, it depends on consistency. Jung believed that the self, the organizing center of the psyche, leaves itself to those capable of sustaining the process without running away from it. That's why ardent desire isn't about speed, but about depth. It doesn't want you to run, it wants you to dive in. And it is in this immersion that the ego begins to dissolve, fights, resists, tries to regain control. It whispers that it's late, that nobody cares. It creates noise because silence threatens its survival. But it is in silence that fire grows. The calmer you become, the more the unconscious flame grows from within, not from without. There is something profoundly human in the act of persisting without a deep down, everyone desires recognition. A true desire is content to continue even when no one sees it. It is at this point that transformation happens. It is when the inner fire becomes self-sufficient. And it is also at this point that many give up, because the ego starves in anonymity. But those who persevere discover something that the whole world tries to buy. You find peace. The fire illuminated by consciousness doesn't seek approval, it seeks coherence. It wants what you do to reflect who you are. When that happens, life gains harmony. Time seems to slow down, obstacles become instructors, and even suffering changes color. You understand that the purpose is not to escape pain, but to give it meaning. Pain without purpose destroys. Pain with purpose transforms. And surprisingly, science itself is beginning to confirm what Jung symbolically stated. Neuroscience research shows that the human brain releases dopamine not only when a goal is achieved, but also when progressing towards it. The pleasure is not in the end, but in the movement. The unconscious has known this for millennia. Fire does not exist for the final destination. It exists to keep the journey alive. As one progresses along this path, one begins to understand something essential. Burning desire is not a request to the universe. Summons calls you to action, to participate in creation, to become a co-author of your own reality. It is not a gift reserved for a few. It is a latent force in everyone, waiting only to be used consciously. When you align yourself with that inner fire, the world responds. Doors that once seemed closed open, the right people appear. Ideas emerge at that moment. None of this is by chance, synchronicity. It's the unconscious saying, now you are ready to sustain what you have. But the fire will still test you. It needs to know if your flame is stable or if it will go out of the first gust. And this test will not come from the outside, come from within, in the form of doubt, weariness, and silence. The fire wants to know if you are capable of maintaining faith even when the world seems not to be watching. It is at this point that many retreat and few cross over. Because sustaining the fire without witnesses is what separates those who leave. And it is precisely here, in this territory between the almost and the impossible, that desire transforms into real. And when that happens, something changes forever. You are no longer guided by fear, nor by the need to prove yourself. The fire is now pure awareness, silent light that guides every step. You no longer chase the dream, you become the movement itself. And it isn't at that moment that desire ceases to be a prison, a path that promises no ease. Because fire, when finally understood, neither destroys nor consumes. It only reveals the gold that has always been hidden within you. Difficulties don't come to extinguish the fire, but to test it. Every flame needs to be tested before illuminating the world. It is at this point that the burning desire ceases to be an idea and becomes reality. Reality demands resistance. When enthusiasm disappears, when support fades, when silence replaces applause, it is then that the fire shows whether it is authentic or merely a reflection of vanity. The human soul only reveals itself when it is alone before the impossible. And it is at this moment, when everything seems to collapse, that something secret begins. Jung said that testing is necessary because the unconscious needs to know if you are capable of sustaining what you asked for. Everyone desires victory. You can bear its weight. Fire is selective. It only stays lit in those who honor it with patience. Most want the result, but not the refinement. They want transformation, but flee from friction. However, gold is only formed under pressure, and consciousness only matures in confrontation with chaos. There's a moment in every journey when the fire almost goes out. You look around and see no progress. The promises seem distant, certainties crumble, and weariness begins to whisper that it's easier to give. This is the turning point. The ego interprets it as failure, but the soul knows it's transition. What's burning isn't the dream, it's what prevents the dream from born. Suffering, though it may seem like punishment, purification. The fire is removing what is not essential, so that what is true may survive. And then comes the dark night of the fire, the moment when nothing is, when the silence becomes unbearable. Even desire, once so alive, seems to vanish. The rational mind tries to understand, but you feel as if something has died inside you, and in a way, that's exactly what happened. The ego is being dismantled. Jung said that the self, the true center of the psyche, can only emerge when the false self surrenders. Life, in its silent wisdom, dismantles what is not authentic till what always was. Tension rises because the fire gives no warning of when it will shine again. It's a time of shadow, where everything seems still. But it is there, in the apparent absence of light, that the true fire is refined. It is when the flame becomes almost invisible that it learns to shine from within. Those who survive this phase discover an unbreakable strength, because they have already burned what could be destroyed. This is the most fragile and, paradoxically, the most powerful moment of the journey. Some people call this phase a desert. Others, it's the same phenomenon, the interval between the old and the new, between wanting and being. During this period, the soul tests whether you trust the process or only the results. If you persevere even when everything seems lost, the fire transforms into faith. And faith, in this context, is not about expecting everything, about moving forward even when everything seems. There are stories of people who lived through that exact turning point. Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist who survived concentration camps, wrote that human beings can endure anything, provided they find a reason for being. While other prisoners crumbled, he observed that those who had a purpose, even a small one, resisted. Their fire didn't come from the body, soul. Jung would say that Frankl found the burning desire in its purest form, the will to give meaning, to transform suffering into purpose. This is the secret of those who don't give up. They understand that pain is not the end. It's the chisel that shapes consciousness. Every disappointment, every obstacle, every fall is the fire polishing. And when the fire finishes its work, what remains is not destruction, clarity. The person who comes out on the other side is not the same one who went in. It becomes simpler, but also more powerful, lighter, but deeper. The fire doesn't increase what you are, it fills it. However, this awakening is not instantaneous. There is a final, almost imperceptible resistance that needs to be overcome. Doubt. It is the inner voice that tries to convince you that nothing has changed, that everything was in vain. This is the ego's last illusion trying to maintain control. It's like smoke after a fire. It looks dangerous, but there's no longer any fire. If you keep walking, even slowly, you will realize that something is different. The mind, once noisy, quiets down. The body, once tense, relaxes. The energy, once scattered, concentrates. The fire is now internal, silent, constant. And comes the turning point. One day, without warning, a new clarity emerges. You wake up and realize that fear has lost its weight, that the search has lost urgency. The same situations that once brought you down no longer affect you in the same way. It's as if something has realigned itself. Jung would call this integration, when the conscious and unconscious stop competing and begin to cooperate. The fire, once chaotic, becomes organized. Desire ceases to be a cry and becomes direction. The curious thing is that the world around you begins. People notice, even without understanding. The energy changes, counters change, opportunities appear. It's not magic, it's coherence. When you align yourself internally, the external world adjusts. The inner fire begins to emit a frequency that attracts what vibrates in the same way. It's the same principle as synchronicities. The universe responds to the clarity of the soul. And the more you align yourself, the simpler everything becomes. A complexity of life doesn't disappear, but it ceases to dominate you. You realize that power has always been where the ego never looked, in balance. The fire, now conscious, neither burns excessively nor goes out. It sustains, warms, guides. And for the first time, you understand that true power doesn't come from dominating the world, but from dominating yourself. But there's a detail most people forget. The fire still tests, even after it continues to observe whether you will use this newfound strength to serve, or whether you will lose yourself in vain. That's why the journey never truly ends. Life is a constant cycle of purification. Each achievement is merely the beginning of a new stage. And every time the ego tries to regain control, the fire reappears to correct the course. This is the point where burning desire transforms into serenity. There is no longer haste, no struggle, no urgency. There is presence. The flame continues to burn, but now it shines effortlessly. You realize that what seemed like a struggle was in fact training. The fire did not come to punish you, it aimed to prepare you. And it is in that instant that silence returns, new meaning. Before silence was emptiness. Now it is fullness. Before it was solitude. Now it is strength. The fire that once burned to transform now illuminates to guide. You understand that there is no greater victory than even after all the storm. The burning desire fulfilled its purpose. It destroyed what was false, refined what was true, and revealed what had always been there, the light that depends on nothing else. But what if this fire, now peaceful, still holds one last secret? What if the flame that seems stabilized still has something to reveal, something that only silence can show? Burning desire blossoms in silence. After passing through the fire, the soul understands that it is not the noise of the world that creates transformation, but the inner sound of one who finally listens to them. Jung said that the unconscious works best in obscurity, far from display, because what is sacred needs to be protected, and it is in seclusion, in the hours without witnesses, that the fire matures and becomes stable light. It is when the impulse ceases to be haste and transforms into direction. True power does not show itself, manifests it. It reveals itself naturally in every decision, in every look that carries purpose. Over time, you realize that the fire was never outside of you. It was always waiting for the courage to be recognized. All the falls, frustrations, and repetitions were merely invitations to this reunion. The burning desire doesn't want you to conquer the world. Wants you to become whole again. Because human beings get lost trying to prove themselves when the real challenge is simply remembering who they are. What seemed like chaos was refinement. What seemed like loss was liberation. Nothing was in vain. Everything was preparing you for the moment when you would be able to sustain your own brilliance without fear of overshadowing anyone. From this point on, life changes texture. Things continue to happen. That every day doesn't disappear, but everything takes on a different meaning. Each act becomes a form of expression of who you are inside. Work ceases to be merely a function. Relationships cease to be about neediness and about exchange. Even silence ceases to be absence and transforms into presence. Soul learns to breathe along with time, without rushing, without demanding, simply flowing consciously. And this state is not mystical, human. It is the point where fire and peace become one and the same. But to live like this, one must choose what is essential, choose what fuels the fire, and abandon what extinguishes it. All distractions, comparisons, empty fixations, all of this steals vital energy. Burning desire needs focus, and focus is born from simplicity. Less noise, the more clarity. Jung used to say that the tree that wants to touch the sky needs to have deep roots in the earth. It's a reminder that greatness is only real when accompanied by. There is no ascension without rootedness, nor enlightenment without shadow. Fire needs fuel, but also soil. When you decide to protect what is sacred within you, something changes around you. Time seems to slow down. Synchronicities become part of everyday life. Small miracles become normal. The right people appear at the exact moment. Ideas fall into place. Opportunities arise in response to sincere thoughts. This is not luck, it's harmony. The universe responds to the coherence of those who live in alignment between thinking, feeling, and acting. This is the true meaning of ardent desire, to be a channel of manifestation between the invisible and the visible, between intention and with each passing day, you understand that there's no need to chase after life. It comes to meet you, present. And it is at this point that the fire ceases to be a pursuit and becomes a state of being. Desire is no longer an impulse, but a continuous, gentle, constant vibration. The mind ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a space for we stop fighting with time and begin to walk with it. Impatience transforms into confidence, and the need for control dissolves into surrender. It is the lucid surrender of someone who realizes there is nothing to prove, only much to live. Applying this understanding to daily life is simpler than it seems. It's not about making grand revolutions, but small, conscious adjustments. Waking up with a purpose in mind, doing what needs to be done with total presence, talking less about plans and acting more silent, honoring the commitments you make to yourself even when no one sees, being attentive to what you feel and not repressing discomfort, the compass, not punishment, and above all, choosing every day what nourishes the soul and not just the ego. This practice transforms the mind into a tool and time into an ally. There comes a moment when a person realizes they are no longer seeking the fire, but embodying it. The burning desire ceases to be a separate force and becomes a natural extension of their being. Everything you do begins to carry the energy of something greater, something that inspires others without needing words. Jung said that what is lived with truth becomes contagious. That's what happens when the inner fire stabilizes. It ignites other flames around you. You become a living reminder that it is possible to live with meaning, courage, and awareness. But this journey doesn't end. It renews itself with every choice. The fire, now tamed, still observed. It wants to know if you will keep it pure, if you will use this light to illuminate or show off. Final test is not in trials, but in peace. It's easy to remain strong in chaos. It's difficult to remain whole in tranquility. That's why true fire manifests itself with humility. It no longer needs to prove its existence. It simply is. And in this silent presence, it finds its highest form of expression: to serve. The burning desire that once consumed you to conquer now warms you to share. It is at this point that the cycle is complete. You understand that each obstacle, each loss, and each doubt were parts of the same design. The design that shaped your consciousness. Everything that seemed to push you away from the path was actually pushing you toward. Fire was never the enemy, it was the guide. And when this perception takes hold, fear disappears. Life becomes sacred again. The most beautiful thing is that none of this requires perfection, only presence. It doesn't matter if you still feel lost, tired, or uncertain. The fire is still there, ready to reignite as soon as you decide to move. Don't wait for motivation. Act. Start small. Today. Now. Write, build, learn, help. Start again. The subconscious responds to sincere movement, and each step creates a new path. What matters is not the speed, but the direction. Carl Jung believed that the greatest act of courage is to follow the call of the soul, even when the path is unknown. That burning desire is that call. It is the bridge between the human and the divine, between fear and creation. Following it is the most authentic way to live, because in a world that tries to extinguish the fire of others, keeping your own burning is an act of resistance. And that is why this journey doesn't end here. It simply changes form each time someone decides to remember who they truly are. Now close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself, what burns within you? What is asking to be born through you? This is the point where your soul begins to. And if you've come this far, you've already ignited something within you. Honor that flame. Write in the comments, even anonymously, the phrase, "I know what I want." Because this simple statement is more than a phrase. It's a pact with your own essence. If this video touched you, if it sparked something in you, like it now, so that this message reaches more people. Share it with those who need to remember their own fire. And if you feel that this journey resonated with yours, subscribe to the channel to continue walking with us. Because from this moment on, you're not just watching, you're awakening. And the fire that is once ignited never goes out.